KPBS On Demand is supported by AARP California, hosting a series of no-cost fraud prevention workshops across San Diego this summer, with information on how to recognize and avoid scams, protect your identity, and stay safe online. Register at aarp.org/San Diego Scam Jam.
It's time for KPBS Midday Edition. On today's show, the latest on the shooting investigation at the Islamic Center of San Diego. I'm Jade Hindman with conversations that keep you informed, inspired, and make you think. We'll have updates from the noon press conference on where the investigation goes from here. Then we'll talk about the state of extremist violence, plus how to talk to children when tragedies happen. That's ahead on Midday Edition. Tragedy unfolded yesterday after two teenage gunmen fatally shot three people at the Islamic Center of San Diego. Today, the community is mourning and looking for answers. KPBS reporter Corey Suzuki has been following the story. He's here now to talk about what we know so far. Corey, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Jade.
So I know you've been covering this just wall to wall since yesterday, and we're having this conversation as the San Diego police holds a press conference, just talking about what they know now and what they know that may be new information. We'll, of course, update listeners as we learn more. But first, Corey, what can you tell us about this shooting that took place yesterday?
Right. Like you mentioned, a lot of this is developing really quickly, but we're hearing about this from two places right now, especially. We're hearing about this from the San Diego Police Department, and we're also hearing from leaders at the Islamic Center of San Diego, which is where the shooting took place. I'll start with what police are saying. Yesterday, San Diego Police Chief Scott Wall said that in the morning, they got a call from the mother of a runaway minor who said she believed her son was suicidal. She reported that her vehicle and multiple weapons were missing, that her son was with a companion, and that they were dressed in what police have described as camo. Police Chief Scott Wall said police started dispatching officers to locations that they thought might be threatened, including a high school and Fashion Valley Mall. While they were trying to zero in on where the teenagers were, they got reports of a shooting at 11:43 a.m. yesterday at the Islamic Center of San Diego. This is the largest mosque in San Diego County. There's also a school next door. This next part comes from leaders at the center who shared more information about what happened there this morning. Leaders at the center say two people parked a car outside the mosque and rushed in towards the entrance. They were wearing armor and they were carrying shotguns, rifles, and handguns. The school went into lockdown, and a security guard at the mosque, his name is Amin, engaged the attackers immediately, they say. He fired the first shot, and then they exchanged multiple shots. Amin shot one of the attackers, but it didn't stop them, leaders at the center said, because of the armor. And as the shooters were entering the center, the Islamic Center's leaders say a community member who lives across the street approached the center trying to figure out what was going on. Another community member was already there calling police. Leaders at the center say the shooters came out, they saw the community members there, and chased them around the building. And here's really where we go back to what the police say. Mm-hmm. Chief Wall says officers at the Islamic Center arrived, and they immediately saw three people dead at the front of the building. At roughly the same time, Chief Wall says they received reports of gunfire a couple blocks away, someone shooting at a landscaper. Police responded to that area, found two teenagers who they think were the shooters dead in a car. They said early yesterday afternoon they believe they died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds.
And, KPBS is choosing not to name the shooters, but what do we know about them?
Right. Well, we still have some limited information. Police say they believe that they were 17 and 18 years old. Chief Wall says they are investigating this shooting as a hate crime. He declined to provide specific details, but he said there was generalized generalized hate rhetoric and speech involved. That's a direct quote from yesterday. The FBI says they're investigating the shooting too.
There's been obviously widespread reaction from the community and the nation, really. What have you heard?
Right. Well, yesterday, Taha Hassan, who is the imam and director of the Islamic Center of San Diego, addressed reporters in the afternoon. And Hassan said they never expected for this to happen. But at the same time, he described what he sees as an unprecedented level of religious intolerance and hate in the United States right now. You could really hear the emotion in his voice as he was talking. Here's some of what he said yesterday.
The religious intolerance and the hate, unfortunately, that exists in our nation is unprecedented.
How are elected officials responding?
Well, San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria also spoke to reporters yesterday, and he called the shooting a violent act of hate. He says his prayers are with the local Muslim community and that police will have an increased presence at houses of worship throughout the city. And Mayor Gloria again reiterated some of what Chief Wall said, that there are these specific details that they are not sharing at this time, but that there was this language somehow associated with the shooting.
What's next in this investigation?
Well, there are questions about these two shooters, who they were, alleged shooters, who they were and their motives, what exactly police mean when they say generalized hate rhetoric and speech. Chief Wall said the police department was serving warrants last night, and law enforcement says they're in the process of interviewing family and friends of the suspects and that they'll be continuing to investigate in the coming days.
All right. And I know this is something we'll continue to follow. This morning on CNN, Mayor Todd Gloria did refer to this as white supremacist hate rhetoric. So, of course, this is something we'll continue to follow. They're in a press conference right now, and I'm sure we'll get more details about all of it. I've been speaking with KPBS reporter Corey Suzuki. We'll be keeping up with the latest at kpbs.org and on our airwaves. Corey, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jade.
And I also want to bring in Tazeen Nizam. She's executive director for the Council on American Islamic Relations, San Diego, also known as CARE. Tazeen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us during such a difficult time. First of all, how are you doing today?
We're managing through the day. We have many events today. We have a press conference, we have a vigil, we have community outpour. So we're managing through the day.
Just a few minutes ago during a live press conference, we heard the Islamic Center's imam and director, Taha Hassan, talk about the three victims in yesterday's attack. How do you hope their memories are honored?
They were heroes. Officer Amin, who stood at the door of the Islamic Center for years, for 7 years, and welcomed community, welcomed students, parents, community members who were there to pray, non-Muslim community members who were there to learn about Islam, allies who came to meet with Imam Taha or learn about the Islamic Center. He welcomed all of them with a smile, and he stood there protecting our community, and he died doing just that.
And CARE San Diego released a statement yesterday in response to the attack. What did that statement say, and how is CARE taking action?
The community is devastated, and the community is grieving. The community has a lot of fear, and we are here to support our community. We are here to facilitate this process for the grieving families. We are here to work with law enforcement, the coroner's office, district attorney's office, to make sure that the families are being supported by us, by other agencies, and are able to bury their loved ones in the most respectful, dignified manner in quick turnaround.
And I understand Care National is also calling for a campaign to end hate and asking police to step up security at local mosques. Can you talk more about how they've responded since this tragedy unfolded? How are you working with them?
The mayor at yesterday's press conference made a commitment to providing security for the mosque. He made a commitment for law enforcement to be doing their job and continuing to be a force that they need to be in their community, something that they have not accomplished yet. And they were not they were not able to prevent what happened yesterday. We hope that local law enforcement, is able to step in and do that because our knight in shining armor, Officer Amin, is no longer there to protect us. So we hope that local law enforcement, PD, sheriff, FBI, are able to step in and take that burden today.
What do you think, if anything, could have been done to prevent this?
Over the last few years, the Islamic Center has received threats. The Muslim community is facing increased Islamophobic rhetoric, hate crimes, hate incidences. All of this culminated to yesterday's incidents. This is something we've seen across the nation. We've seen across different communities as well, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be our systemic securities that we put in place, whether it be a matter of policy change, all of this has fallen short. And that is the reason we need to demand our administration, our elected officials, our law enforcement to step in and step up and take this very seriously.
I want to talk more about that. I mean, because what can you tell me just about the broader trend of hate and intolerance we're seeing in this country?
In the recent few months, we've seen mosques in the Los Angeles area being attacked and victims of hate incidences. Previously, the Islamic Center has been subjected to hate crimes as well, and many death threats coming into the Islamic Center on the imam, his family, his staff. And this is something that we're seeing at other mosques as well. And we've had smaller incidences at other mosques in the area. But yesterday's event is of the extreme gruesome nature, which no one expected and no one was prepared for.
What else are you hearing from community members right now as they process all this?
It is very difficult for community to move forward. We as a community are mourning the loss of our three heroes. But also, we are shaken by the fear instilled in our children. There were 130 students over there, 25 plus staff members from the school, other staff members from the Islamic Center. All of them were subjected to this assault, but fortunately, came out alive.
Hmm. You know,
All of this community is shaken, fearful, and devastated.
yeah, this center is really a vital and welcoming space. Tell me more about the Islamic Center of San Diego and the role it plays in the community.
The Islamic Center of San Diego has been a hub of not just prayer and congregation, but also a hub for learning for other community members who come to the Islamic Center to learn about Islam, to learn about Muslim. Many allies have come to the Islamic Center to talk about social justice issues. Imam Taha has been a beacon of social justice projects across the county and has had a lot of movements in the community. So the Islamic Center has always had a welcome door policy, inviting Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And together we've bonded over many issues. We've broken bread together. We've grown together as a community. So to see this place of love and welcome attacked is very difficult for our community. And I'm sure the larger community is just as shook because they saw this as a safe place. They saw this as a place of love and welcome.
Well,
And it is going to be difficult for us to continue
yeah.
like this.
Tazeen Nizam, we actually have Mayor Todd Gloria speaking live at this news conference right now. We want to cut in to hear a bit of what he is saying.
Sisters, they
Sure.
need our care, our comfort, our concern, and our support. And I, for one, am here to make sure that they receive it. Charitable funds have been established through the Islamic Center of San Diego to help support the families of these three men. There'll be other ways to support them and to show your support in the coming days. And I ask folks to take advantage of those opportunities to show what we are, which is America's finest city, a place on the U.S.-Mexican border, along the Pacific Rim, a place of extreme diversity. And all of us know that we're made better because of that diversity. Now is a time not to divide ourselves, as the two murderers yesterday are attempting to do, but instead to come together as one San Diego, and now more than ever, to express our solidarity with our Muslim brothers and sisters in this time of great need. I know that we will do this because we've done it before, we will do it again. And lastly, again, in memory of the three men that were lost yesterday, they represent the very best of the city. Let them always be remembered as the heroes that they are. Thank you.
All right. We heard from Mayor Todd Gloria there. Also, moments before he spoke, we understand the FBI is conducting interviews with the shooter's family and friends. They also seized a number of firearms. What is your response to what Mayor Gloria had to say there, and how do you feel this is being handled?
The mayor's office, law enforcement agencies have been on the site since yesterday, and they have witnessed all of this firsthand, how this unfolded, how how as a community we are dealing with this. And now it is it's up to them to step in and step up and keep the promises they're making to our community, provide us the support that we need, provide us the security we need as an Islamic center and as a community as a whole, because there's 20 other community Islamic centers across the county that could be subjected next. That could be anything could happen there. And we're asking for our law enforcement agencies and our elected officials to take this matter very seriously and step in the shoes that heroes like Amin have left empty, and protect our community, stand up for us.
Also, later today, there'll be a press conference at 2 p.m. with local Muslim leaders. What can you tell us about that conference and what you'll be discussing?
Many community leaders are very concerned, and hence we have called for the press conference for them to be able to express their concerns and express the need that we have, the need of the hour. Imam Taha Hassani would be there, and many other community leaders will be there expressing the same. And then later in the evening at 6:30, we will be having a vigil where we will have our allies and some elected officials speaking about how they will step in and how they will be a partner in our healing process.
And what is your message to those who were impacted by yesterday's events? And also, I've heard you speak about the security guard as well. What more can you tell me about him?
As I said, he was a hero. He served the community for 7 years. He chose to be in that position because he wanted to protect his community. He was always smiling, welcoming people to the Islamic Center. He stood guard and he did his job to his best till the last minute, till his last breath. He was a protective force. So in our light, he's a hero. He's a martyr. And so are the other two brothers that were shot on premises. This community was so close. We are a close-knit community, and we are going to be mourning their loss for years to come. Their families are very much in shock and pain. And as a larger community, we're here to support them through this difficult time. We're here to walk them to the other side of this. And we're here to let them know that we're here for them and they're not alone.
Something Imam Taha Hassan mentioned at the presser is, the responsibility of our community to really foster a culture of tolerance and love. From where you sit, how can the community show support during this time and better cultivate that culture?
My belief is that most hate crimes and most hate incidences take place because of the ignorance and hatred of people who don't bother to learn about us, learn about Muslims, learn about Islam. So I welcome the larger community to open their eyes and realize we are just people like them. We are people who want to put food on our table, send our kids to college, put a roof over our head. We are not here to change the American culture. We are not here to impose Sharia law. We are just their neighbors, their friends, their teachers, their doctors, their educators. We are part and parcel of this community. We are part of the fabric of this nation, and we belong here. This is our home just as much as us theirs. So stop hating on us. Stop killing us. Let us be part of this community and build community together in a peaceful, loving manner.
And finally, where does this healing and processing begin?
This is a long, drawn out process. This is going to require many forms of healing. This is going to require psychological healing, financial healing, physical healing, safety and security measures put in place, and a lot of care from multi-agencies, a lot of care from our allies, a lot of care from our general community to build our trust back and remove the fear that we are crippled with today.
I've been speaking with Tazeen Nizam. She's executive director for the Council on American Islamic Relations San Diego, also known as CARE. Tazeen, thank you so much, and we are definitely thinking of you and everyone else during this tragedy.
Thank you for having me.
Still to come, we take a closer look at the role extremism played in this tragic shooting. KPBS Midday Edition returns after the break. Welcome back to KPBS Midday Edition. I'm Jade Hindman. This hour, we are talking about the shooting that unfolded at the Islamic Center of San Diego yesterday. 3 people were killed. Police are investigating the attack as a hate crime. It's been described as racial supremacy being a motive. In a press conference just a few moments ago, FBI agent Mark Rimley said they found writings and various ideologies outlining religious and racial beliefs about how the world and how they envision it. He said that they did not discriminate on how they hated. I'm joined now by Brian Levin. He's the founder of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at Cal State San Bernardino. Professor Levin, welcome back to Midday Edition.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, what can you tell us about the motive in this and what these religious and racial beliefs were that were held by the attackers?
Well, we're getting more details, and we saw some images that looked like these fellows were terrorists, rather, were right-wing radicalized. As we've seen going back to the massacre in New Zealand years ago. And what we see a through line with many of these youthful extremists, including online radicalization and digital footprints, and access to weaponry that's also oftentimes accompanied by social or psychological stressors. And that's a through line, across ideologies. One thing that we've seen with the turn of administrations in 2025 has been a change in that far-right white supremacists were, from 2018 to 2024, the most fatal extremists here in the United States. And in 2025, it became much more diverse. Just last week, though, the administration came out, interestingly, with a counterterrorism strategy that did not mention far right and white supremacist extremists, even though we have not had a year in recent memory where they haven't killed people. Instead, they mentioned transgender folks or people who are anti-Christian. It was indeed political slop that was put in gift wrap of a counterterrorism strategy by this administration
And
just last week.
Yeah, and I also want to be specific here because it's Mayor Todd Gloria has pointed, to this being caused by racial supremacy. What is meant when that phrase is used? What do we mean in this specific case?
Well, one of the things that we've seen, interestingly enough, has been some of these racial supremacists aren't even Anglo-white. So in Texas a couple of years ago, there was a Nazi Latino who murdered 8 people. And one of these alleged assailants appears to be a Latino as well. One of the things I think we really have to be careful about today is recognizing that terrorism has become much more regionalized, and people get radicalized online with a cohort of fellow travelers. And many of these are done by loners as opposed to duos. But with young people, what we're now seeing, particularly on the right wing side of the scale, have been those that leave manifestos, as apparently done here. There were Nazi symbols, including an SS symbol, which was part of Hitler's Third Reich, on a gas can, as well as another symbol that was used by the Nazis as well, a sun symbol. So it looks to me like these fellows were dyed-in-the-wool Nazis, at least from the limited amount of information that we have now.
Mm-hmm. This tragedy also comes at a time when Islamophobia has reached record highs, according to civil rights organizations. I mean, what do we know about that and its connection to this shooting?
Great question. There's different stratifications with regard to aggression. So some of our colleagues in the civil rights area count a broader range of incidents. But the bottom line is, here in California, preliminary FBI data, it's not complete yet, but for at least for 2025, showed an increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes from 29 to 43. While nationally, there was a decline from around 261 to 228. We have bucked that trend, but remember, a couple of things. The FBI data generally shows that hate crimes are getting more violent. Both homicides and aggravated assaults rose nationally overall, even though overall hate crimes declined somewhat, though off a record.
How does, the radicalization of young men in our society serve as a threat to public safety more broadly?
You've hit it exactly, and that's something that the counterterrorism strategy by this administration has ignored. For instance, on the hard left, they concentrate on Antifa as some global umbrella blob or hierarchical organization, which it is not. The thing that we're seeing across the ideological spectrum has been loners. In this case, it was a duo, but loners who are often self-radicalized in an ecosystem, often online, and then they act out violently. But the hard right folks, those terrorists, tend to want a bigger body count, while left-wing extremists have been more targeted against specific people, like assassinations.
To you, what does this incident tell us about the state of extremism in our country?
What it tells us is exactly what we're seeing on the TV screen. That the old days of the Klan or the Weather Underground have tilted now to a much more idiosyncratic and self-directed type of extremism where there are individuals, and it's internationalized across the ideological spectrum as to who is a legitimate target for aggression, but that can reach right into our own neighborhoods because of an increasingly unmoderated social media landscape and young people who do not have access to mental health services as much as they have access to firearms. And those are the common threads that we see. This kind of self-radicalization or with peers, access to weaponry, and some kind of psychological or social stressor.
Also, there's a phenomenon known as, stochastic terrorism, which is the use of mass media to publicly demonize a person or group. Is that at play in this, you think? Does that have anything to do with it?
Oh, absolutely. Stochastic terrorism relates to messaging. And for those of us in the counterterrorism analytic community, we have the sense of dread when we see this increase in stereotypes and bigotry online that then translate into violence on the streets. And we saw this. I did a study with some colleagues a decade ago, which showed that in the November 2016 elections, hate crimes and epithets both rose in tandem at the same time. And November 9th, 2016, the day after election, was the worst day for hate crime in over a decade. So yes, the stochastic terrorism, when there is messaging that demonizes and legitimizes, it amplifies and directs where unstable people, and sometimes people who aren't unstable but angry, will operate and direct their violence toward.
As we learn more information about yesterday's events, what questions do you have?
I want to know more about the manifesto. I want to know more about the weaponry. And I want to know more about where this was broadcast. There's all kinds of information out there that's not confirmed, so I'm not going to go into it. But social media appears to have played at least a significant partial role in this. And I'd be curious to know about these individuals' estrangement. A lot of times we see some kind of social withdrawal more broadly into something more narrow. So that's something I want to hear about. I want to hear more about the symbols, and we've seen Nazi symbols that were apparently used in this attack. So those are some of the things I want to know. I also want to know who knew. In many of these cases, there's something called leakage, where someone, family, colleagues, other students, will pick up on something, a frequently messaged hatred and desire for access to weaponry. Those are two indicators that we always try to look at. So those are some of the things that I'd like to see once the investigation goes on a little bit further.
All right. I've been speaking with Brian Levin. He's the founder of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at Cal State San Bernardino. Professor, thank you as always.
Thank you. And just one quick thing. On behalf of the Commission on the State of Hate, which I chair, I want to say that we condemn this horrible act of Islamophobia and bigoted violence against our brothers and sisters in the Muslim community. Thank you for letting me condemn this horrible act. That's something that all of us have to do. Because when leaders make statements condemning this stuff, hate crimes go down. We saw it after 9/11 when President Bush did just that.
Brian Levin, thank you so much. Up next, how to talk to children when tragedies happen. KPBS Midday Edition returns after the break. Welcome back to KPBS Midday Edition. I'm your host, Jade Hindman. In addition to being the largest mosque in San Diego, the Islamic Center of San Diego is also home to a school which was in session during yesterday's shooting.
I felt a bit scared. My legs were shaking and my hands. And my head was like hurting me a lot. I felt like a rock.
That is from video of a student from Bright Horizon Academy in reporting from Reuters. As we continue to look for answers to yesterday's tragedy, how can parents, teachers, and the community at large help children to cope? I'm joined now by Dr. David Schoenfeld. He is a pediatrician and director of the National Center for School Crisis and Bereavement at the Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. Dr. Schoenfeld, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Glad to have you here, and really glad to have your perspective on this, because you've been involved in the response to major tragedies like school shootings, like what we had at the Islamic Center of San Diego yesterday. What are your initial thoughts for the children at the school there, and what they are now going through?
Sure. So for children who are that directly impacted, particularly if at the time they felt there was some threat to their safety or their life, then they are certainly at more risk of having significant adjustment reactions relating to perceptions of trauma. But the fact is, it really also affects other children who were not as directly impacted as well.
So there are those children directly impacted by this, but there are also other schools that were put in lockdown nearby the center, as you mentioned. You work with schools and communities across the country. What would you tell area schools the day after an event like this?
Well, the first thing is to start conversation with children. We have a tendency not to want to talk about upsetting things because we don't want to upset children. But we really can't protect them from finding out about what happened. We can only prevent them from getting the support that they need. So I think the first thing is to start the conversation with children, and tell them that you are concerned if they're upset or worried about what just happened, or about what they might be worried about could happen to them in the future that may or may not be related directly.
What do we often get wrong about trauma and how kids process this?
Well, part of it is sometimes we just assume they don't know, because they don't talk about it. I always tell people that the most common adjustment reaction you'll see is nothing. Many kids, just like adults, will often hide their distress because they think there's something wrong with them, or because they don't want to burden the adults around them who are already upset. So it's always a good idea to kind of start the conversation and said, you might have heard that this happened. What's your understanding of it? Or what have you heard so far? And then what do you feel about it? So I think it's a good idea to open up the conversation with kids.
Mm. It was just heartbreaking yesterday in watching video and watching all of this unfold to see so many children walking out of that center hand in hand in a line. And, as many as 140 kids were within 15 feet of these suspects. Where do you start the conversation with children about this and what's happened?
So sure. So for children who have been that close to a major potentially traumatic event, I think the first thing is you start by letting them know that they are safe now. So I think before you go into conversations about what happened, you want them to understand that they now are safe where they are, and people will take care of them. But then I think you want to ask them what's their understanding of what happened and how they're feeling about it. Now, the issue is for kids who have been very directly exposed. Sometimes they're not ready right away to talk about what happened, and they may actually need some time. So we don't want to force people who have been through potentially very traumatic events to talk about what happened and their feelings and their reactions right away if they're not ready to do that yet. So when I talked about starting the conversation, it's really for children who were not, directly impacted, children in other schools, children throughout the community, and children in other communities, because they hear about what happened and they often wonder how it might affect them either now or in the future.
What are some of the common responses we may see from children after being exposed to violence like this, whether directly or more indirectly, like through the news when they hear about it?
Sure. So one is it maybe you'll see fears, so they might be afraid of the same thing happening to them. And I think most people anticipate that. But you can also become anxious. So you may be fearful of other things. So one of the common reactions we see is school avoidance. Even if the incident happened, let's say it was a disaster that happened on summer break while people were home, kids may still be anxious about separating from parents and caregivers to return to school because they may worry their parents aren't there to protect them or they're not there to protect their siblings or parents. So you can see fears and anxiety. You can see sleep problems, trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, frequent wakening, difficulty waking up, or nightmares, really any disruption in sleep. And you can see changes in appetite and eating. You can
Mm.
have difficulties with concentration and academic performance or work performance. So there are a number of different reactions that you'll see in kids.
And is it the same for younger children? And should we bring it up even when kids aren't asking about it?
Well, let me start with the second question. I do think we should bring it up even when they're not asking about it, because if we don't talk about it, they don't know that they can ask about it. I have to tell the story. I went to Aurora after the shooting in the multiplex theater, and that was over the summer. It was a midnight showing of Batman. And the school decided that they were going to help lead the response for children throughout the community. And so I talked with the school system, and they agreed that they thought it would be a good idea on the first day back at school that they would welcome students back to class, but also tell them what had happened in the movie theater and let them know what support and services were in place in the school, in the classroom, if they wanted to talk about that or anything else that was worrying them. And the question came up, what grade level do you start that with? Which gets to your question about younger children. And my comment was even kindergartners have heard about Batman. And so the school was originally thinking of starting a little bit later. And they said, no, you're right. So we'll start in kindergarten. Well, one of the staff in the school had a student who was just about to enroll in kindergarten. And initially, she told me she did not support that idea. She had actually not said anything to her child. They turned off the TV whenever he was in the room. They didn't even leave the newspaper out, and they made very sure that they never talked about it when he could hear. And then one day, sometime later, she just suggested going to see a Disney film at the movie theater and a parent over dinner. And the kid just said, I don't think we should do that. There's someone there killing people in movie theaters. And she asked him, where did you hear this? I think he had gone to the Y. He was actually in a swimming lesson, and one of the children told him while he was in the pool. And the staff member said, originally I thought my child's too young for this, but I really didn't prevent him from finding out about it. But what happened was he was worried and he didn't talk to me about it because I never talked to him about it. So I really think you have to say to kids, this has happened in our community, or you may have heard about this in the news. What's your understanding and what questions do you have? And then you can go into how does that make you feel?
Hmm.
And let kids talk about their reactions.
And, the violence of it all is one thing. But to add to that, the shooting at the Islamic Center of San Diego is also being investigated as a hate crime. How do you start that conversation with kids where hate, racism, and religious intolerance can be factors in an attack like this?
Right. So these are some of the harsh realities of what happens in societies. And right now, we're at a particularly complicated period in the history of our country. But the issue is that, yes, you can talk to children because one of the reactions that they're going to have is anger. Why did this happen? How could people allow this happen? And people want to try and figure out what occurred so they can make themselves feel safer or make sure that others they care about are safer. But part of the reality is that there isn't anything you're going to be able to say that's going to be able to explain all of this. And sometimes kids ask rhetorical questions just like adults. They might say, why would somebody do this? Why would God allow this to happen? Why does it occur in society? And if they're very young children, it may be difficult for them to understand. But to be honest, some of those questions are difficult for adults to answer as well. So I know as adults, we always want to be able to solve the problems that our children have, explain everything in a way that feels okay. But sometimes what we need to do is tell them that it isn't fair, it is worrisome, and maybe what they really want is a hug or just someone to listen to them. And they're not expecting you to have the perfect answer of why this would occur. Now, with very young children, say 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, they may not actually think in the same way we do about different groups. They may not identify, if you say this is part of this culture, they may not understand the concept of culture or religious affiliation in the same way. And so it may be difficult for them to understand concepts like, genocide, hate crimes against certain groups. The type of answers you can give to children will depend on their age, but you do need to recognize that even with older children, you might not have the answers. And we can still talk about things when we don't have all the answers.
I've been speaking with Dr. David Schoenfeld. He is the director of the National Center for School Crisis and Bereavement at the Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Dr. Schoenfeld, thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you for the invitation.
And you can find more resources at schoolcrisiscenter.org, and we'll, of course, have links to more resources on our website at kpbs.org. And if you are in need of support, the number to call is 988. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. If you missed anything, you can download KPBS Midday Edition on all podcast apps. Don't forget to watch Evening Edition tonight at 5 for continuing coverage of this. Also, you can always share your feedback or segment ideas at midday@kpbs.org, or you can call us. The number is 619-452-0228. I'm Jade Hindman. We'll talk again tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego's Art Power, presenting Mivos Quartet, performing the complete string quartets by Steve Reich, May 29 at UC San Diego. Tickets at artpower.ucsd.edu.